We spend a lot of time talking about media bias, right? Arguing if a story is leaning left or leaning right. But today, we're going to peel back a totally different layer. We're going to ask a much more fundamental question, not if the news is biased, but why. So, let's dive in.
And this right here, this single idea is the key to the whole thing. It completely reframes how we should think about the news. See, it's not just about information or some kind of public service. It's about investment, it's about portfolios, and ultimately financial returns. This one thought really changes everything. Okay, so first up, let's really dig into this shift in perspective. We're going to put that whole familiar debate about bias on the shelf for a minute, and instead, we're going to focus on the raw, unfiltered power of ownership itself.
See, most of us were trained to ask the question on the left, is this story biased? But what if the more powerful question, the one that really gets to the root of it all, is the one on the right? Who owns this story? Because a lot of the time, the answer to that second question totally explains the answer to the first.
All right, so let's start connecting the dots. Let's reveal just how concentrated the global media landscape has actually become. Now, you're probably going to recognize the brands, but you might be pretty surprised by who's actually pulling the strings behind the curtain. First up, a name that probably rings a bell for a lot of you, Rupert Murdoch. His empire, News Corp, is just a masterclass in how to apply the exact same strategy across different continents to get very similar results.
And what's wild is how consistent the playbook is. Whether you're looking at the US, the UK, or Australia, the News Corp strategy is pretty much the same. They push hard for deregulation, they pour fuel on divisive culture war fires, and they work to position themselves as kingmakers in national politics. It's the same game plan, just tweaked for 3 different countries.
Okay, now let's hop over to Europe and talk about a powerhouse that's been making some serious waves in the US market, Axel Springer.
Now this is a really fascinating combination. They have the tabloid muscle in Germany with a paper called Bild, but now they also own outlets that cater to the American policy class with Politico, and to the business elite with Insider and Morning Brew. It's the strategic roll-up of different, very influential audiences, all reporting back to the same headquarters.
So that's one kind of power. But there's another type we have to talk about, vertical integration. This is when a company doesn't just, make the shows. They actually own the delivery system, the pipes that bring it right into your home.
And that right there, that's the whole game. When you own the content, say NBC News, and you own the pipes that deliver it, like Comcast cable here or Sky over in Europe, you get this immense amount of leverage. You get to set the terms for everyone else.
All right, another big player for you, Paramount Global. And they're a perfect example of how American-centric media narratives get exported all around the globe through direct ownership of networks.
I mean, just look at this footprint. In the US, you've got the major network CBS, but they also own similar huge networks in the UK, in Argentina, and in Australia. This creates this incredibly powerful channel for sending out not just TV shows, but cultural viewpoints and news framing on a truly global scale.
And look, this isn't just an American thing or even a European thing. This pattern of consolidation, it's happening absolutely everywhere.
So let's just do a quick lightning round here. You've got Bertelsmann in Germany, which controls huge TV networks and the world's biggest book publisher. You've got Televisa Univision creating this massive media corridor between the US and Mexico. Prisa in Spain does the same thing for Latin America. And then you have a French company, Canal+, that basically owns the remote control for news and sports across a huge chunk of Africa. The pattern is identical, just with different names in different languages.
But wait, corporate ownership? That's only half the story. There's another huge category of owner that we absolutely have to talk about: national governments.
You see, for state-owned media, think Qatar's Al Jazeera, China's CGTN, or Russia's RT. The goal is often crystal clear, and it's singular: project national power. These outlets aren't just news organizations. They're instruments of foreign policy, and they're designed to shape global opinion.
Okay, so we've seen who the owners are, both corporate and state. Now for the big question. So what? Why does any of this actually matter? What's the real-world effect of all this concentrated ownership on the information that you and I see every single day?
Well, here's what happens. You get fewer and fewer owners making decisions for more and more people. Their portfolios become these massive, cross-border assets, which often means that local news just gets completely left behind. And in this new world, we, the audience, we're all fragmented, and our attention gets bundled up and sold wholesale to the highest bidder.
And this slide, this is really the crux of the whole thing. The incentives are just in direct conflict with each other. A media company that's owned by shareholders or by a state, well, its job is to create value for its owners. That means driving clicks, getting ad revenue, or pushing a national agenda. But a public service model, its goal would be to serve citizens by building things like civic trust. And those two goals, they are fundamentally opposed.
So, that brings us to the big takeaway. Now that we understand the landscape and we see the incentives at play, what's the one tool you can use? What's the one question you should be asking to make sense of the media you see every day?
And here it is. This is the one thing to remember. If you ever wonder why one story is getting all the airtime while another is completely silent, don't just look at the headline. Look at who owns it. The cap table, which is really just a fancy term for the list of investors, tells you exactly who stands to gain. The money is what calls the shots.
Because when you zoom out and look at the whole map, from North America to Africa to Asia, the conclusion is, well, it's pretty simple and pretty stark. A tiny, elite group of corporate and state interests controls the entire information superhighway that we all depend on. Wealth owns the wires.
And that brings us full circle. We started by talking about the public square, but now we know it's not really a public square at all, is it? It's an asset. It's owned, and it's operated with very specific goals in mind. So the only real question left to ask is the one that you can now start to answer for yourself. Who owns the news that you see, and what do they want from you?